When my 4-year-old son pointed at me during family dinner, everyone froze. The mashed potatoes were getting cold, but nobody was eating. I sat at the head of our mahogany dining table, watching my husband Mark serve wine to my sister Jessica with that same lingering smile he used to reserve just for me. The smile that made my stomach twist into knots every time I caught it these past few months. "Sarah, you're being awfully quiet tonight," Mom said from across the table, cutting into her roast beef with precise movements. "Everything all right, honey?" I forced a smile and reached for my water glass, noticing how my hand trembled slightly. "Just tired. Long week at the marketing firm." Mark didn't even look up from his plate. 6 months ago, he would have squeezed my shoulder and asked about my day. Now he was too busy stealing glances at Jessica, who had conveniently worn that low-cut black dress I'd always told her looked amazing on her. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Well, you should take better care of yourself," Jessica chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. "You've been looking so stressed lately. Haven't you noticed, Mark?" My husband finally lifted his head, those brown eyes I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago now cold and distant. "Sarah's always been high-strung. You know how she gets. High-strung." There it was again. The same phrase they'd been using to dismiss every question I'd asked, every concern I'd raised. Why was Jessica calling Mark at 11 p.m. on Tuesday nights? Why had he suddenly started working late every Friday? Why did I find Jessica's earring in his car last month? "I'm not being paranoid," I told Mark just 3 days ago, standing in our kitchen while our 4-year-old son Tommy played with his toy trucks in the living room. "Something is going on." "Sarah, this is exactly what I'm talking about," he'd replied, shaking his head with that patronizing expression I'd grown to hate. "You're creating problems that don't exist. Maybe you should talk to someone." Talk to someone. As if I were the problem. As if I were crazy. Dad cleared his throat and raised his wine glass. "Well, let's not focus on work tonight. We're all here together, and that's what matters. Family. Family." The word felt like acid in my mouth as I watched Jessica lean closer to Mark, her hand brushing against his as she reached for the salt. They thought they were being subtle, but I'd been watching them for weeks now. The secret texts that made Mark smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. The way Jessica always seemed to know about Mark's schedule before I did. The mysterious girls' nights that Jessica suddenly started having every Friday, the same nights Mark worked late. Tommy was sitting in his booster seat next to me, happily mashing his green beans with his fork. At 4 years old, he was our little chatterbox, always repeating things he'd heard, asking endless questions about everything. Tonight, though, he'd been unusually focused on his food. I took a sip of wine, trying to calm my racing heart. The burgundy liquid did nothing to ease the knot of anxiety that had taken up permanent residence in my chest. Around the table, conversation flowed about Dad's retirement plans and Mom's new book club, but I felt like I was watching everything through thick glass. Then Tommy looked up from his plate, his bright blue eyes, my eyes, scanning the faces around the table before landing on me. He raised a small finger and pointed directly at me. "Mommy," he announced in his clear, innocent voice that could be heard by everyone at the table. "Why did Daddy tell Aunt Jessie that you're stupid and that he loves her more than you?" The entire room went silent. The silence stretched across the dining room like a physical weight, pressing down on all of us. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking, each second amplifying the shock that had frozen everyone in place. Mark's wine glass slipped from his fingers, the burgundy liquid splashing across his white button-down shirt and pooling on the tablecloth. Jessica's face had drained of all color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Tommy, sweetheart," Mark's voice cracked as he tried to force a laugh. "You must have misheard something. Daddy would never." "Yes, you did." Tommy interrupted, his 4-year-old indignation in full force. "You said it when I was hiding behind the couch last Friday. You were kissing Aunt Jessie and you said Mommy was stupid and boring and that you wished she would just go away so you could be together." Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Dad's face had turned red, that vein in his forehead bulging the way it did when he was about to lose his temper. Jessica looked like she might actually faint. "Mark," Dad's voice was deadly quiet. "Please tell me my grandson is confused." I felt something inside me snap, not break, but snap back into place like a rubber band that had been stretched too far. 6 months of gaslighting, 6 months of being told I was paranoid and high-strung and imagining things. 6 months of my own family making me doubt my sanity. "He's not confused," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I looked directly at Mark, watching as his face cycled through panic, anger, and something that might have been guilt. "Are you, Tommy? Tell everyone exactly what you saw." "Sarah, don't," Jessica finally found her voice, but it came out as a strangled whisper. "Don't what?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Don't let my son tell the truth? Don't finally prove that I'm not the crazy one here?" Tommy, oblivious to the adult catastrophe unfolding around him, continued with the brutal honesty that only children possess. "And Daddy said that Mommy's cooking is yucky but he has to pretend to like it, and that Aunt Jessie is prettier and more fun. And then they took their clothes off and—" "Enough." Mark roared, slamming his hand down on the table so hard that the dishes jumped. Wine spilled from overturned glasses, and Mom let out a small gasp. Tommy's eyes filled with tears at his father's outburst, and that, more than anything else, sent white-hot fury coursing through my veins. "Don't you dare yell at him," I snapped, moving protectively in front of my son. "He's the only one in this room who's been honest." "Sarah, please," Jessica whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's not. We didn't mean for this to happen. It just what?" I turned on her, all the pain and betrayal of the past 6 months erupting like a volcano. "It just happened? You just accidentally started screwing my husband? You just accidentally helped him convince me I was losing my mind?" "Girls," Mom's voice was shaking. "Please, not in front of Tommy." But it was too late for protecting anyone from this mess. The truth was out now, ugly and raw and impossible to take back. Mark was staring at the wine stain spreading across the white tablecloth like blood, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitching. Jessica had buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. And for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe again. Dad slowly pushed back his chair and stood up, his face a mask of controlled rage that I'd only seen twice in my life, once when Jessica crashed his car at 16, and once when he caught our neighbor stealing from his tool shed. This was worse than both combined. Mark, he said, his voice so low it was almost a growl. You have 30 seconds to explain to me why my grandson just described watching you betray my daughter in what I assume is her own home. Dad, Mark started, but his voice cracked again. Not Dad. Not anymore. The words hit Mark like a physical blow. Mr. Patterson will do just fine. Tommy had started crying, confused by all the angry voices and the tension crackling through the room like electricity. I pulled him onto my lap, smoothing his dark hair and whispering that everything would be okay, even though I wasn't sure it would be. Sarah, honey, Mom said softly, her own eyes brimming with tears. How long have you known? I didn't know, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I suspected for about 3 months, but every time I brought it up, they made me feel like I was going crazy. Mark told me I needed therapy. Jessica said I was being paranoid and jealous. I looked at my sister, who was still hiding behind her hands. You told me I was imagining things when I found your earring in his car. What earring? Dad's voice was getting more dangerous by the second. The silver hoops I bought her for Christmas last year. They were under Mark's passenger seat when I was looking for Tommy's toy last month. Jessica finally lifted her head, mascara streaking down her cheeks in black rivers. Sarah, please, you have to understand. Understand what? Mom snapped, and I was surprised by the venom in her usually gentle voice. Understand how you could sleep with your sister's husband? Understand how you could lie to her face for months? Understand how you could help him make her think she was losing her mind? It wasn't supposed to happen, Jessica sobbed. We were just talking at first. Mark was having problems at work, and Sarah was always so busy with her promotion and... Don't you dare blame this on me, I cut her off, my protective grip tightening around Tommy. Don't you dare make this about my career or anything else I did or didn't do. Mark finally found his voice, though he still couldn't meet my eyes. Sarah, I know how this looks, but it's complicated. We've been growing apart for months, and Jessica was just there to listen when. When did it start? I asked quietly. What? When? Did it start? I enunciated each word carefully, the way I did when Tommy was in trouble. Mark's silence was answer enough, but Jessica, in her guilt-ridden state, apparently felt compelled to confess everything. March, she whispered. It started in March. March. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. March? You mean when I was working 16-hour days to land the Morrison account? When I was killing myself to get that promotion so we could afford the new house she wanted? I looked at Mark, who had gone pale. When I missed Tommy's school play because I was trying to build a better life for our family? Sarah, Mark reached toward me, but Dad stepped between us. Don't, Dad warned. Don't you dare touch her. And where exactly has this been happening? I continued, my voice getting steadier as my anger crystallized into something cold and sharp. Please tell me you haven't been bringing my sister into the bed where I sleep. The look that passed between them told me everything I needed to know. Oh my God. The words came out as barely a whisper. In our bed. In the bed where our son comes to snuggle with us on Sunday mornings. Mark's silence was confirmation enough, but Jessica's fresh wave of sobs sealed it. I felt something die inside my chest, not my heart breaking, but something deeper. The last shred of respect I'd held for either of them disintegrating completely. How many times? I asked, my voice eerily calm now. Tommy had stopped crying and was looking up at me with those wide blue eyes, sensing that something fundamental was shifting in his world. Sarah, please don't do this to yourself, Mom said gently, but I shook my head. How many times in my bed, Jessica? My sister looked up from her hands, her face blotchy and destroyed. I don't know, maybe 15? 20? 20 times. 20 times they defiled the place where I laid my head every night, where Mark and I had conceived Tommy, where I trusted myself to be vulnerable and safe. 20 times while I'd been working myself to exhaustion, trying to build something better for us. And Tommy's school play, I continued, the pieces clicking together in my mind. The one I missed in April because of the Morrison presentation. You were there, weren't you, Jessica? I remember seeing the photos Mom posted on Facebook. You were sitting next to Mark. Sarah, Jessica started, but I held up my hand. You went to my son's school play with my husband while I was working. And then what? Did you come back to my house afterward? Did you tuck my child into bed and then go screw his father? We never did anything when Tommy was awake, Mark said quickly, as if that somehow made it better. We would wait until he was asleep, or when he was at daycare on Saturdays. Saturdays? I felt the blood drain from my face. You mean when I was at the office catching up on work? When you told me you were taking Tommy to the park or to see your mother? Sometimes Mom would watch him, Mark admitted quietly. Your mother knows? The betrayal just kept expanding, like ripples in a pond. Linda knows about this? She figured it out a few weeks ago when she came by unexpectedly on a Saturday afternoon. And she said nothing to me. Jesus Christ, Mark, how many people have been lying to my face? Dad's chair scraped against the floor as he stood up abruptly. That's it. Mark, get out of my house. Now. Mr. Patterson, please, if we could just. Get out. Dad roared, his face purple with rage. Get out before I do something I'll regret in front of my grandson. Mark stood slowly, his hands shaking as he reached for his jacket draped over the back of his chair. Sarah, we need to talk about this. About Tommy, about the house, about. About what? I laughed, a bitter sound that felt foreign coming from my throat. About how you've been planning to leave me? About how many people you've turned against me? About which lawyer you've already consulted? The flash of panic in his eyes told me I'd hit the mark. You have, haven't you? I stood up, settling Tommy on my hip. You've already seen a lawyer. That's why you've been so confident, so dismissive every time I questioned what was happening. You've been planning your exit strategy. It's not like that, Mark said weakly. What's his name? I pressed. The lawyer. What's his name? Robert Chen, Jessica said quietly, and Mark whirled on her. Jessica, shut up. Chen and Associates downtown? Dad asked, his voice deadly quiet again. Mark's face confirmed it. Well, Dad said, pulling out his phone. Lucky for you, I know Robert well. We play golf every Thursday. I think I'll give him a call tonight and let him know exactly what kind of man he's representing. The color drained from Mark's face as Dad held up his phone. Please, Mr. Patterson, don't call Robert. This doesn't have to get ugly. Ugly? Mom's voice cracked like a whip. It's already ugly, Mark. The question is how much uglier you want to make it. I shifted Tommy to my other hip, my mind racing. A lawyer. He'd already consulted a lawyer, which meant this wasn't some spontaneous affair that got out of hand. This was calculated. Planned. When did you see him? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. When did you first meet with Robert Chin? Mark's jaw tightened. Sarah, this isn't the time or place. When? I shouted, and Tommy startled in my arms. I immediately softened my voice, kissing the top of his head. When, Mark? Jessica was crying harder now, her mascara leaving black streaks on Mom's good cloth napkins. Tell her, she sobbed. Just tell her everything. We can't keep lying. 2 months ago, Mark finally admitted. I saw him 2 months ago. 2 months. While he was still telling me I was paranoid. While he was still coming to bed every night and kissing me goodbye every morning. While he was still playing father-son catch with Tommy in the backyard every Sunday. And what did Robert tell you? Dad asked, his finger hovering over his phone screen. Dad, please don't make him, Jessica started. Don't you dare, Mom cut her off. Don't you dare defend him after what you both done. What did the lawyer tell you, Mark? Mark ran his hands through his hair, the same nervous gesture he'd done since college. He said that with Sarah's new promotion and salary, I'd likely get alimony. And since I'd been Tommy's primary caregiver while Sarah worked late, I'd have a strong case for joint custody, maybe even primary custody. The words hit me like a freight train. Primary custody? You're never home, Sarah. Mark exploded, his careful facade finally cracking. You work 60-hour weeks, you missed Tommy's play, you missed his last doctor's appointment, you forgot about parent-teacher conferences last month. I forgot because you told me they were next week. You wrote the wrong date on the calendar. That was an honest mistake. Was it? I was seeing everything clearly now, like someone had adjusted the focus on a camera. Or were you already building your case? Making me look like the absent mother? The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy had gone quiet in my arms, his small hand clutching the collar of my blouse. Oh my God, I whispered. The Morrison account. You knew how important that promotion was to me. You encouraged me to work those extra hours. You told me you were proud of me for chasing my dreams. I was proud. You were building a case. I set Tommy down gently, my hands shaking with rage. You wanted me to work more so you could document that I was an absent mother. You were playing the long game. Dad's phone was already ringing. Robert? It's Bill Patterson. We need to talk about Mark Sullivan. No, this can't wait until Thursday. Mark lunged toward Dad. Please, don't ruin this for me. I have a right to legal representation. You have a right to a lot of things, Dad said, holding the phone away from Mark's reaching hands. But you gave up the right to my respect when you decided to manipulate my daughter while screwing her sister. It wasn't manipulation, Jessica said weakly. Mark really was unhappy. With a wife who was building a career to support his family? Mom stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. With a wife who was working herself to the bone so they could afford the house he wanted in the better school district? I felt like I was drowning in revelations. Every conversation, every argument, every moment of self-doubt over the past 6 months was being recontextualized. The forgotten anniversaries he'd blamed on my work schedule. The missed family dinners he'd made me feel guilty about. The way he'd started documenting every time I came home late, claiming he was just worried about my work-life balance. You've been documenting everything, haven't you? I asked quietly. Every late night, every missed dinner, every time I'd been too tired for sex. Mark's silence was answer enough. The journal, I said, the memory hitting me like a slap. That little black notebook you started keeping in January. You said it was for work projects. Mark's face went ashen. What journal? Dad asked, still holding his phone but now watching Mark with laser focus. He keeps it in his nightstand drawer, I continued, my voice getting stronger with each word. I saw him writing in it a few times when he thought I was asleep. Always after I came home late or when Tommy had a tantrum that I couldn't handle because I was exhausted. I looked directly at Mark. It wasn't for work, was it? Sarah, you're making this sound more calculated than. Where is it? I shouted, and this time I didn't care that Tommy jumped. My 4-year-old son had already heard his father call me stupid and boring. A little more shouting wasn't going to traumatize him further. Jessica was sobbing into her hands again. Mark, just tell her. Please, this is torture. What's in the journal, son? Dad's voice had dropped to that dangerous whisper again. He'd finished his call with the lawyer and was now giving Mark his full, terrifying attention. Mark looked around the table like a cornered animal, his eyes finally landing on Tommy, who was clinging to my leg and watching his father with confusion and fear. It's a record, Mark admitted quietly. Of incidents. Times when Sarah wasn't available for Tommy, times when her work took precedence over family responsibilities. Incidents. I repeated the word like it tasted bitter. You mean like when I worked late to prepare for the Henderson presentation and you had to pick Tommy up from daycare? You were supposed to pick him up that day. Because you told me that morning you had a dentist appointment. I rearranged 3 client meetings to make it work, and then you texted me at 4 p.m. saying you were running late. The pieces were clicking together so fast I felt dizzy. The dentist appointment that didn't exist. Because you were with Jessica. Mark's jaw tightened. I did have a dentist appointment. I just finished early. Finished early and went to screw my sister instead of picking up your son. I turned to Jessica. Where? Where did you go that day? Because it wasn't your apartment, your neighbor Mrs. Chin would have seen Mark's car. Jessica looked up with red-rimmed eyes. The Marriott on 5th Street. A hotel. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You were renting hotel rooms while I was working to pay for our mortgage. It was only a few times, Jessica whispered. Usually we just, at your house when I was providing for our family. I looked at Mark, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. How much money have you spent on hotel rooms, Mark? Money from our joint account that I've been funding with 60-hour work weeks? Mark's silence stretched on until Dad stepped forward. Answer her. Maybe $800. Over the past few months. $800. I laughed, that same bitter sound from before. $800 of my money so you could cheat on me in comfort while documenting what a terrible mother I am. Tommy tugged on my pants leg. Mommy, why is everyone crying? I knelt down to his level, smoothing his dark hair and forcing a smile. Because sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, sweetheart. But you didn't do anything wrong, okay? You were very brave to tell the truth. Are you and Daddy getting divorced like Jamie's parents? The innocence of the question, delivered with the same matter-of-fact tone he used to ask for juice or comment on the weather, nearly broke me. But it also crystallized something in my mind. I stood up, looking directly at Mark. Yes, Tommy. Daddy and I are getting divorced. Sarah, we should discuss this privately, Mark started. Privately? I cut him off. Like how you've been privately planning this for months. Like how you've been privately turning my own success against me. Like how you've been privately fucking my sister in our bed. Language, Mom said automatically, then looked embarrassed at her own response given the circumstances. No, Mom. I'm done watching my language. I'm done being polite. I'm done pretending this is anything other than what it is, a calculated betrayal designed to destroy me and take my son. Mark's face hardened. I would never take Tommy away from you. Really? Then why does your little journal exist? Why did you consult a lawyer about getting primary custody? Why have you spent months making me look like an unfit mother? Because maybe you need to take a hard look at your priorities. Mark exploded. When was the last time you read Tommy a bedtime story? When was the last time you made it to one of his soccer games? You missed his birthday party planning because of a conference call. A conference call that landed us the Morrison account. A contract worth $200,000 that was going to pay for the house you wanted, in the school district you insisted Tommy needed. Money isn't everything, Sarah. Tell that to the lawyer you hired with my money. The words hung in the air like poison. Mark stood there, his chest heaving, finally showing his true colors after months of careful manipulation. But I wasn't the same woman who doubted herself 3 hours ago. You're right, I said quietly, and everyone looked surprised. Money isn't everything. But you know what else isn't everything? A father who lies to his son. A father who uses his child as a weapon against his mother. I walked over to where my purse sat on the side table and pulled out my phone. Dad, what's Robert Chen's direct number? Sarah, what are you doing? Mark's voice cracked. I'm calling your lawyer. The one you hired to take my son away from me. I started dialing the numbers Dad rattled off. I think Robert should know about the $800 you spent on hotel rooms. I think he should know about the journal full of fabricated incidents. I think he should know exactly how you've been building your case. You can't call him. Attorney-client privilege. Doesn't apply to me, I finished. I'm not his client. You are. The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Chen and Associates, this is Robert. Mr. Chen, this is Sarah Sullivan. I believe you've been consulting with my husband Mark about a divorce case. Mark lunged for the phone, but Dad stepped between us again, his face like granite. Mrs. Sullivan, Robert's voice was cautious. I can't discuss details of my consultation with your husband, as I'm sure you understand. Of course. But I can discuss details with you, can't I? Like the fact that my husband has been documenting false incidents to build a custody case while simultaneously having an affair with my sister? Sarah, hang up the phone, Mark demanded, but his voice sounded desperate now. I'm particularly interested in whether he mentioned the $800 he spent on hotel rooms for his affair. Money from our joint account that I'd been funding while he stayed home and played victim. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Sullivan, if these allegations are true, they would significantly impact any potential proceedings. Oh, they're true. We have a 4-year-old witness who just announced the affair to our entire family during dinner. Very detailed witness, actually. Children have such good memories. Mark sank into his chair, his head in his hands. Furthermore, I continued, my voice getting stronger, I have access to our bank records showing the hotel charges. I have access to his phone records showing calls to my sister at all hours. And I'm quite certain I can find this mysterious journal he's been keeping. Mrs. Sullivan, I think it would be best if we arranged a meeting. Oh, we'll definitely be meeting, Mr. Chen. But not with Mark. I'll be hiring my own representation, and I'm sure they'll want to discuss your client's fraudulent documentation and financial impropriety. I ended the call and looked at Mark, who was staring at me with something between shock and fear. That journal, I said quietly. I want it. Right now. Sarah, please. Right. Now. I turned to Dad. Would you mind driving to our house with me to retrieve some of my belongings? I think Mark will be more cooperative with witnesses present. Dad smiled for the first time all evening, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I'd be delighted, sweetheart. Jessica finally spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. Sarah, I know you hate me, but please don't destroy Mark completely. Think about Tommy. I am thinking about Tommy, I cut her off. I'm thinking about how his father tried to steal him from his mother using lies and manipulation. I'm thinking about how his aunt helped orchestrate it. I picked up Tommy, who had been watching everything with wide eyes. We're going to get some of our things, baby. Would you like to help Mommy pack? Tommy nodded solemnly. Are we going to live with Grandpa and Grandma? For a little while, I said, kissing his forehead. Just until Mommy finds us a new house. Mark's face went pale. Sarah, you can't just take him. Watch me. The drive to my house, our house, though it already felt foreign to me, took 15 minutes that stretched like hours. Dad followed behind Mark's car in his truck, while I sat in the passenger seat with Tommy buckled into his car seat, chattering about whether his stuffed elephant Mr. Peanuts would like living at Grandpa's house. Mommy, will Daddy visit us at Grandpa's? Tommy asked, his innocent question hitting me like a punch to the gut. Yes, sweetheart. Daddy will still see you lots. I forced my voice to stay steady, even though the thought of coordinating custody visits with a man who'd been plotting to take my son away made me feel sick. When we pulled into our driveway, I noticed Mark's hands shaking as he turned off the engine. Good. Let him be scared for once, instead of me questioning my own sanity every night. Inside, our house felt like a crime scene. The kitchen where Mark had probably whispered sweet lies to Jessica while I worked late. The living room couch where Tommy had apparently hidden and witnessed God knows what. The hallway leading to our bedroom, where 20 times, they'd defiled everything I thought was safe and sacred. The journal first, I said, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. Mark stood frozen by the front door. Sarah, maybe we could talk about this rationally. Rationally? I laughed, heading straight for the stairs. You mean like how you rationally documented fake evidence against me? Or how you rationally spent our money on hotel rooms while building a case to take my child? Dad's heavy footsteps followed mine up the stairs, while Tommy ran ahead to his room, apparently deciding this was an adventure rather than a catastrophe. I envied his 4-year-old resilience. In our bedroom, former bedroom, I yanked open Mark's nightstand drawer. There it was, a black leather journal, the kind you'd buy at any office supply store. Nothing special about it, except it contained months of calculated lies designed to destroy my life. Sarah, please don't. Mark had followed us upstairs, his face ashen. I opened to a random page and read aloud, March 15th, Sarah missed Tommy's bedtime again due to client call. Tommy asked why Mommy doesn't love him enough to read stories. Lasted until 9:47 p.m. That's not what happened, I said, looking up at Mark. Tommy had a fever that night. I was on the phone with Dr. Martinez about whether we needed to take him to urgent care. You know, being a responsible parent. I flipped to another page. March 22nd, Sarah chose work dinner over Tommy's soccer practice. Left at 5:15 p.m. despite knowing practice was at 6 p.m. Tommy cried when he realized she wasn't coming. The work dinner that got cancelled, I continued, my voice getting harder. I came home at 6:30 p.m. with pizza and found you'd already taken Tommy to practice without telling me the time had been moved up. You said you forgot to mention it. Dad was reading over my shoulder now, his jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. What else does it say? I kept flipping pages, each entry more damning than the last. April 3rd, Sarah too tired for intimacy again. Third time this week. Relationship deteriorating due to her work obsession. April 3rd, I said, the memory crystal clear now. The night I came home and found you on the phone in the garage, talking in whispers. You said it was your brother calling about your mom's birthday party. But Dave told me later he never called that week. Mark's silence was confirmation enough. April 18th, Tommy had nightmare, called for Mommy. Sarah didn't wake up even when he was crying. Had to comfort him alone. I looked up at Mark. April 18th was when I had the flu. I was on NyQuil and could barely stand up, but you wrote it like I was just ignoring our son. You're taking everything out of context, Mark said desperately. Am I? I kept reading. April 25th, Sarah forgot to pack Tommy's lunch. Had to drive to school during important work call to bring food. Pattern of negligence continues. The lunch you volunteered to pack because I was leaving early for the Henderson presentation, I said. You specifically said you'd handle breakfast and lunch that morning. Dad grabbed the journal from my hands, his face darkening as he read more entries. Jesus Christ, Mark. You documented her having the flu as evidence of bad parenting? From Tommy's room came the sound of toys being gathered, probably his favorite cars and books for the move to Grandpa's house. The normalcy of it, contrasted with the calculated cruelty I was reading, made everything feel surreal. How many pages? I asked, taking the journal back. Mark didn't answer, so I flipped to the end. 47 pages. 47 pages of twisted truths and outright lies, all designed to paint me as an unfit mother while he played the devoted father. You bastard, I whispered, and for the first time all evening, I felt tears threatening. Not from sadness, but from pure rage. You complete bastard. I turned to a random page near the end and read the most damning entry yet. May 15th, Sarah chose Morrison presentation over Tommy's emergency room visit. Left me to handle broken arm diagnosis alone while she prioritized career. My blood went cold. Tommy never broke his arm. It was just a precaution, Mark started. Tommy never even went to the emergency room in May. I slammed the journal shut. You fabricated an entire medical emergency that never happened. Dad's face was murderous. You documented a fake hospital visit? I flipped frantically through more pages, my hands shaking as I discovered entry after entry describing events that were either completely false or so distorted they bore no resemblance to reality. Doctor appointments that never happened. Missed school events I was never told about. A supposed parent-teacher conference where the teacher allegedly expressed concern about my absence. Mrs. Rodriguez, I said, pieces clicking together. Tommy's teacher. I'm calling her right now. Sarah, it's 9:30 at night, Mark said desperately. Then I'll call her tomorrow and ask about this mysterious conference where she supposedly told you I was an uninvolved parent. I pulled out my phone. But first, I'm calling every number in this journal. Every doctor, every teacher, every person you claim to have spoken with about my failures as a mother. Mark lunged forward and grabbed my wrist. You're not thinking clearly. You're emotional. Get your hands off her. Dad roared, shoving Mark backwards so hard he stumbled into the dresser. That's when I saw it, a small stack of photographs that had been hidden under some papers in Mark's drawer. My stomach dropped as I recognized the images, me coming home late, looking exhausted. Me in my car on phone calls. Me at my laptop on weekend mornings, working on presentations. You were taking surveillance photos of me, I said, the words barely audible. In our own driveway. You were building a case file like I was some kind of criminal. Dad snatched the photos from my hands, his face contorting with rage. There are timestamps on these, Mark. You were documenting her schedule like a private investigator. Any good lawyer would advise, Mark began. Any good husband would communicate with his wife instead of plotting her destruction. Dad threw the photos at Mark's feet. How long have you been planning this? How long have you been setting her up? From downstairs, I heard the front door open and close. Jessica's voice called out tentatively, Mark? Sarah? Stay down there. I shouted, not wanting her anywhere near Tommy, who was still innocently packing his toys. Mark ran his hands through his hair, that nervous gesture I'd once found endearing and now recognized as a sign of his guilt. Look, maybe I got carried away with documenting things, but Sarah's work schedule really has been. September 8th, I interrupted, grabbing the journal again and reading from the very first entry. That's when this started. September 8th, Mark. Want to know what happened on September 7th? Mark's face went pale. September 7th was when I got promoted to senior marketing director. When I got the raise that qualified us for the mortgage on this house. I held up the journal. You started planning to destroy me literally the day after I achieved the biggest success of my career. Dad looked between us, understanding dawning on his face. You couldn't handle her success, could you, son? Couldn't handle that she was making more money, getting recognition, building something meaningful. That's not. So you decided to tear her down systematically, document her exhaustion from working to support this family, and then use it all to take away the one thing that mattered most to her. Tommy appeared in the doorway, dragging his stuffed elephant and looking confused by all the raised voices. Mommy, I can't find my race car pajamas. They're in the laundry, sweetheart, I said gently, though inside I was screaming. Even now, even in the middle of discovering the full scope of Mark's betrayal, I was the one who knew where our son's pajamas were. I knelt down and scooped Tommy into my arms, carrying him back to his room. How about we pack your blue dinosaur pajamas instead? The ones Grandma bought you for Christmas? While I helped Tommy gather his clothes, my mind was racing. The journal entries went back to September, but Jessica had said the affair started in March. 6 months of betrayal, but 7 months of documentation. Which meant Mark had been planning to leave me before he'd even started sleeping with my sister. Mommy, can Mr. Peanut sleep in the big bed with us at Grandpa's house? Tommy asked, holding up his stuffed elephant. Of course he can, baby. I kissed the top of his head, inhaling that sweet scent that was purely him, innocence in a world that had just revealed itself to be far more calculating than I'd ever imagined. From the bedroom, I could hear Dad's voice getting more aggressive. What else haven't you told her, Mark? What other lies are there? I settled Tommy with his toys and walked back to the doorway, listening. The Morrison account, Mark was saying, his voice defensive. She acts like landing that contract was this huge sacrifice for our family, but she doesn't know about the celebration dinner. My blood froze. The Morrison celebration dinner. The one with my team that I'd skipped to come home to my family. What about the celebration dinner? Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. She told me she came straight home after landing the account, that she turned down drinks with her team to be with Tommy and me. But her assistant posted photos on Instagram from McCready's bar. Sarah was there until midnight, drunk off her ass, celebrating while I put Tommy to bed alone. That's not, I started to protest, then stopped. Because I had gone to McCready's. But not until after I'd come home first. I walked back into the bedroom, my voice steady. I came home at 6:30 that night, Mark. Remember? I brought champagne and Thai food from that place Tommy likes. We ate dinner together, I gave Tommy his bath, read him 3 books, and put him to bed. Mark's jaw tightened. You left at 9:15. I left at 9:15 to meet my team for 2 drinks to celebrate the biggest account of my career. I was home by 11:30, and you were already asleep. I stared at him, seeing clearly now. But you documented it as me choosing work over family, didn't you? 2 drinks turned into 2 drinks. Jenny Morrison posted those photos at 10:45 p.m., not midnight. I had the timestamps. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my Instagram. Here. Jenny posted our team photo at 10:47 p.m. I'm holding a Coke because I'd already switched to caffeine-free drinks by 10 o'clock. Dad looked at the photo, then at Mark. She's right. This timestamp says 10:47. And here, I continued, finding another screenshot. My Uber receipt from that night. Pick up at McCready's at 11:18 p.m., drop off at home at 11:31 p.m. Mark's face was getting redder. The point is, you prioritized celebrating with coworkers over. Over what? Over sitting on the couch with you watching Netflix after I'd already spent 3 hours focused entirely on our family? I felt that familiar rage building again. I celebrated the account that qualified us for this house, Mark. The account that increased my salary by 37%. The account that meant you could quit that job you hated and stay home with Tommy like you wanted. I never said I wanted to quit. March 3rd, I interrupted. You said, and I quote, God, I wish I could just be a stay-at-home dad and not deal with Peterson's micromanaging anymore. So I worked my ass off to make enough money for you to do exactly that. Jessica's voice drifted up from downstairs, talking on her phone in hushed tones. Probably calling her friends to spin this disaster into somehow being my fault. Who's she calling? Dad asked, apparently having the same thought. I walked to the top of the stairs and listened. No, it looks bad, but Sarah's been so focused on work lately, and Mark was just lonely. Jessica. I shouted down the stairs. Get off the phone. Sarah, please, I'm just trying to. You're trying to control the narrative before the truth gets out. I started down the stairs, my rage propelling me forward. Who are you talking to? Jessica clutched her phone to her chest. Just Mom. I was updating Mom about. I grabbed the phone from her hands and looked at the screen. Not Mom. The name displayed was Derek Martinez, Jessica's ex-boyfriend who worked for the local newspaper. Derek Martinez? I stared at Jessica in disbelief. You're calling a journalist? It's not what you think. You're trying to get your version of the story out there first. I looked at the call duration, 7 minutes and 23 seconds. What did you tell him, Jessica? Her silence was answer enough. I put the phone to my ear. Derek? This is Sarah Sullivan, Jessica's sister. Oh, hey Sarah. Jess was just telling me about some family drama. Family drama. I repeated his words slowly. Is that what she called it when she told you about screwing my husband for 6 months? The silence on the other end stretched for several beats. She said there were some marriage problems and things got complicated. Derek, I'm going to give you the real story. My husband documented fake evidence against me for 7 months while planning to steal custody of my 4-year-old son. He spent $800 of my money on hotel rooms to cheat with my sister. Tonight, my son exposed the affair by repeating what he overheard. Would you like to hear the recordings I'm about to make of my husband admitting to falsifying evidence? Sarah, wait, Jessica grabbed for the phone, but I stepped back. Because I'm happy to give you the exclusive, Derek. The real exclusive. About systematic gaslighting, financial fraud, and child manipulation. Much better story than family drama, don't you think? I hung up and threw the phone back at Jessica. Stay away from the press. Stay away from my son. And if I find out you've been spreading lies about me to anyone else, I'll make sure the whole town knows exactly what kind of person you really are. Mark appeared at the top of the stairs, the journal clutched in his hands. Sarah, you can't threaten people. Watch me. I snatched the journal from Mark's hands and flipped to a page I'd missed before. May 28th, I read aloud. Sarah refused intimacy again, claiming exhaustion. Suspects she may be having emotional affair with colleague David Chin. David Chin? I stared at Mark in disbelief. You mean Robert the lawyer's nephew? The graphic designer who's been helping with our marketing campaigns? Mark's face flushed red. You spend a lot of time on calls with him. He's gay, Mark. David is married to his husband Michael. I threw the journal at his feet. I've met Michael 3 times at company events. You've met Michael. Dad's expression darkened further. You accused your wife of cheating with a gay man while you were actually cheating with her sister? It wasn't an accusation, it was just an observation. An observation you wrote down as evidence. I grabbed the journal again, flipping through more pages. Here's another observation. June 2nd, Sarah defensive when asked about late meeting with David Chin. Refused to show text messages. The text messages about Michael's surprise birthday party that David was planning. My voice cracked with fury. He asked me not to mention it because he was worried Michael would overhear. I was helping him plan a romantic dinner. Jessica was still clutching her phone, tears streaming down her face. Sarah, please, we never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I whirled on her. When you were helping Mark build a case against me, what exactly was the endgame? Joint custody? Full custody? Just destroying my reputation for fun? We never planned. Bullshit. I screamed, and Tommy's voice called down from upstairs. Mommy? Are you okay? I took a shaky breath, forcing my voice back to normal. I'm fine, sweetheart. Keep packing your cars. Mark stepped closer, his voice dropping. Sarah, think about what you're doing. You're scaring Tommy with all this yelling. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare use our son's emotional well-being as a weapon against me after what you've done. I opened the journal to the last entry, dated just 3 days ago. June 15th, Sarah missed Tommy's dentist appointment, claiming work emergency. Dr. Foster expressed concern about parental consistency. My hand started shaking. Tommy doesn't have a dentist appointment scheduled until July 8th. I have it written on our calendar upstairs. It was a follow-up. There was no follow-up. I pulled out my phone and dialed Dr. Foster's emergency line. Let's call him right now and ask. Mark grabbed my wrist again. Sarah, you're being hysterical. The sound that came from Dad's throat was barely human. He grabbed Mark by the shirt and slammed him against the wall so hard that a picture frame fell and shattered on the hardwood floor. If you touch my daughter one more time, Dad growled, his face inches from Mark's, I will personally make sure you never see that little boy again. Are we clear? Bill, please, Mark's voice was barely a whisper. It's Mr. Patterson. And you're going to answer her questions, all of them, truthfully, or I'm calling the police about harassment and fraud. Jessica stepped forward tentatively. Maybe we should all just calm down. Calm down? Mom's voice came from the front door. She'd apparently decided to join the confrontation, and her usually gentle face was twisted with rage. My daughter just discovered her husband has been systematically documenting lies to steal her child, and you think we should calm down? Mom, you don't understand, Jessica started. I understand perfectly. Mom's voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. I understand that I raised one daughter who works herself to exhaustion for her family, and another who repays that sacrifice by sleeping with her brother-in-law. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Tommy had stopped moving around upstairs. Then Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went white. What now? I asked. Mark's hands were shaking as he stared at his screen. It's Linda. My mother. What does it say? He didn't answer, so I grabbed the phone from his hands. The text message was short and devastating. Robert Chin just called me. Pack your things. You're not welcome in this family anymore. Mark's own mother had just disowned him. I stared at the text message from Linda, Mark's mother, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sadness. Linda had always been kind to me, treating me like the daughter she'd never had. The fact that even she was cutting ties with Mark spoke volumes about how indefensible his actions were. Your own mother, I said quietly, handing the phone back to him. The woman who raised you, who taught you right from wrong, wants nothing to do with you. Mark slumped against the wall, his face ashen. She doesn't understand the whole situation. She understands enough. I looked at the shattered picture frame on the floor. It was from our wedding day, Mark and me laughing as we cut the cake. How naive I'd been, thinking that smile was genuine. What did Robert tell her exactly? I don't know, Mark whispered. I pulled out my own phone and called Linda directly. She answered on the first ring. Sarah, honey, I am so sorry, Linda's voice was thick with emotion. If I had known what that boy was doing. Linda, what did Robert Chin tell you? Everything. The journal, the hotel receipts, the fake documentation. Robert said he's never seen such a calculated attempt to manipulate a custody case. Her voice broke. Sarah, I swear to you, I had no idea about the journal or the lies. When I found him with Jessica that Saturday, I thought it was just weakness, not this orchestrated nightmare. My stomach dropped. You found them together? When? 3 weeks ago. I came by to bring Tommy those cookies he likes, and they were in your kitchen. Jessica ran out the back door, and Mark begged me not to tell you. He said he was going to end it, that it was just a mistake. But you didn't tell me. The betrayal cut deeper, coming from Linda. She'd been like a second mother to me. I should have. God help me, I should have told you immediately. I was trying to protect Tommy from a messy divorce, but I see now that I was just enabling Mark to hurt you more. From upstairs, Tommy called down, Mommy, can we take my night light to Grandpa's house? Of course, baby, I called back, then returned to the phone. Linda, there's something else. Mark wrote in his journal that you were watching Tommy during some of these encounters. Was that true? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Linda? Twice, she whispered. He asked me to watch Tommy on 2 Saturday afternoons, said you were working and he had errands to run. I had no idea he was, oh God, Sarah, I helped him cheat on you without knowing it. Mark looked like he might be sick. Jessica had sunk onto our couch, her face buried in her hands. Which Saturdays? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. April 14th and May 19th. I took Tommy to the zoo on the 14th, and to the Children's Museum on the 19th. We were gone for hours both times. I remembered those days. I'd come home from work to find Tommy full of stories about his adventures with Grandma Linda, and Mark acting unusually affectionate and grateful. Now I knew why. He'd spent the afternoon in bed with my sister and was overcompensating with guilt. The Children's Museum, I said, pieces clicking together. Tommy came home with that dinosaur book he'd been wanting. I bought it for him in the gift shop. He was so excited to show you and Mark. Linda's voice cracked. I was unknowingly giving them a cover story while rewarding their betrayal. I looked at Mark, who had slid down the wall and was sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. Did you plan it that way? Ask your mother to take Tommy somewhere special so he'd be distracted and happy while you destroyed our marriage? Mark didn't answer, but his shoulders shook. He did, didn't he? Dad's voice was deadly quiet. He used his own mother's love for Tommy as part of the scheme. Jessica finally looked up from the couch. It wasn't supposed to be like that. We never meant to involve Linda or Tommy or... What exactly did you mean for it to be like? Mom's voice cut through Jessica's excuses. A clean little affair with no consequences? A perfect exit strategy with no collateral damage? We thought maybe if Sarah was working so much anyway, maybe she wouldn't even fight the divorce. Maybe she'd be relieved. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. They'd convinced themselves that I was so career-obsessed, so disconnected from my family, that I'd just hand over my husband and son without a fight. Relieved, I repeated slowly. You thought I'd be relieved to lose my family. Relieved, I repeated slowly. You thought I'd be relieved to lose my family. The words hung in the air like poison. I stared at Jessica, this woman I'd shared a bedroom with as children, who I'd helped through her messy breakup with Derek 2 years ago, who I'd trusted with my deepest fears about balancing motherhood and career. Answer me, I said, my voice eerily calm. Did you really think I'd just walk away from my son? Jessica's mascara had created black rivers down her cheeks. You're always so stressed about work, always talking about deadlines and clients. We thought maybe you'd want a fresh start. A fresh start. I laughed, that bitter sound becoming familiar. Without the inconvenience of a 4-year-old and a mortgage. That's not what we meant. Then what did you mean? I stepped closer to the couch. Paint me the picture, Jessica. In your fantasy world where I'm relieved about this divorce, what exactly was supposed to happen to Tommy? Mark finally lifted his head from his hands. We thought maybe joint custody would be better for everyone. You could focus on your career without feeling guilty. Stop. The word came out sharp enough to cut glass. Just stop talking. I walked to the window, looking out at our front yard where Tommy had learned to ride his bike just last month. Where we planted tulips together last spring. Where Mark had kissed me goodbye on our 5th wedding anniversary, telling me he loved me while apparently planning my systematic destruction. Linda, I said, still holding the phone. Are you still there? I'm here, honey. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. When you found Mark and Jessica together 3 weeks ago, what exactly did you see? The silence stretched long enough that I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking. Linda? They were intimate. On your kitchen counter. Her voice was barely audible. Jessica was wearing one of your aprons. Nothing else. My knees nearly buckled. The kitchen counter where I made Tommy's breakfast every morning. Where we did puzzles together on Sunday afternoons. They'd defiled that too. Which apron? I asked, though I wasn't sure why it mattered. The blue one with the sunflowers. The one Tommy painted for you at daycare. The Mother's Day gift from my 4-year-old son. They'd used my child's handmade present as a prop in their betrayal. From behind me, I heard Jessica make a small, broken sound. Sarah, please. Please what? I turned around slowly. Please don't be upset that you wore my son's Mother's Day gift while screwing my husband. Please pretend that's not the sickest thing I've heard yet. Mark struggled to his feet, his face flushed with either shame or anger. Sarah, you're taking everything and twisting it into something worse than. Worse than what it is? I cut him off. Mark, you documented fake medical emergencies. You spent my money on hotels. You manipulated your own mother into providing alibis. You turned my child's gift into part of your sick fantasy. I gestured around our living room. What exactly am I supposed to twist? The truth is already horrifying enough. My phone buzzed with a text message. The name on the screen made my blood freeze, Derek Martinez. I opened the message. Sarah, I think you should know Jessica called 3 other people after our conversation. Jenny Morrison from your office, Principal Edwards from Tommy's school, and someone named Dr. Patricia Webb. Thought you'd want a heads up. Dr. Patricia Webb. My therapist from 2 years ago, when I'd been struggling with postpartum anxiety. Jessica, I said, my voice deadly quiet. Did you give Derek Martinez the name of my former therapist? Jessica's face went white. Did you? I screamed, and this time I didn't care that Tommy could hear me. I was trying to provide context, Jessica started. Context? Dad stepped forward, his face murderous again. What context could you possibly provide about Sarah's private medical information? She saw Dr. Webb for postpartum depression, Jessica said quickly. I thought Derek should know that Sarah's had mental health struggles before making this situation sound. Get out. I roared. Get out of my house right now. But Jessica wasn't done destroying me. I also told him about the Xanax prescription from last year, and how you've been drinking more wine lately because of work stress. The sound that came from my throat was barely human. I lunged toward Jessica, but Dad caught me around the waist. She's trying to make me sound unstable, I gasped. She's trying to make it look like I'm having a breakdown so Mark's custody case looks stronger. Mark's face had gone ashen as he realized the implications of what Jessica had just admitted to. You told a journalist about Sarah's private medical history? Mom asked Jessica, her voice shaking with rage. About her therapy and medications? I was trying to explain why she might be overreacting. Overreacting to finding out her husband and sister have been systematically gaslighting her for months. Dad's grip on me tightened as I tried to break free again. Overreacting to discovering a journal full of lies designed to steal her child? Tommy's voice drifted down from upstairs. Mommy, I'm ready to go to Grandpa's house now. My innocent little boy, calling down to tell us he was ready to leave the only home he'd ever known, while his aunt was spreading lies about his mother's mental health to the press. Jessica had just declared war. And she had no idea what she'd unleashed. I set Tommy down gently and pulled out my phone, my hands steadier than they'd been all evening. Derek? It's Sarah Sullivan again. Sarah, I was just about to call you back. Did Jessica Sullivan give you information about my private medical history? The pause told me everything. She mentioned some background context. Derek, I'm going to explain something to you very carefully. Jessica Sullivan just committed a federal crime by sharing my private medical information without consent. Dr. Patricia Webb will confirm that Jessica was never authorized to discuss my treatment, which was for postpartum anxiety, not depression, and lasted exactly 4 sessions in 2022. I looked directly at Jessica as I continued. Furthermore, the Xanax prescription she mentioned? That was a 5-day supply prescribed after my father's heart surgery last year when I was having panic attacks in the hospital waiting room. My actual medical records will show that clearly. Jessica's face had gone from white to green. As for my drinking, I'd be happy to provide my recent physical exam results showing perfect liver function, or we could discuss how Jessica herself was arrested for drunk driving in 2021, something that's public record. Derek's voice was cautious now. Sarah, I think there might be some confusion about what Jessica was trying to. There's no confusion. Jessica is systematically trying to destroy my reputation to help her lover, my husband, win a custody battle built on fabricated evidence. I paused, watching Mark sink further into the couch. Would you like to hear the recordings I'm about to make of them admitting to their lies? Recordings? Mark's voice cracked. I tapped my phone's recording app, holding it up so everyone could see the red recording indicator. This is Sarah Sullivan, June 18, 2024, 9:47 p.m. Mark, for the record, did you document false incidents in your journal to build a custody case against me? Sarah, you can't record me without. Actually, I can. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I looked at Dad. Isn't that right? You mentioned that when Uncle Jim was dealing with his contractor issues. Dad smiled grimly. One-party consent. Perfectly legal. I turned back to Mark. So, about those false incidents. The emergency room visit that never happened. The parent-teacher conference where Mrs. Rodriguez never expressed concerns about me. The dentist appointment that's not scheduled until July 8th. Mark's silence stretched until Jessica broke. Just tell her the truth, Mark. She already knows everything. Thank you, Jessica, I said, still recording. So you're confirming that Mark documented false incidents? Some of the entries were embellished. Embellished. I repeated the word slowly. Like embellishing a fictional hospital visit for our 4-year-old son? Linda's voice came through my phone, still connected from our earlier call. Sarah, honey, are you recording this? Because I can confirm that Mark asked me to lie about those Saturday afternoons too. He told me to say I'd invited myself over if you ever asked. Mark's head fell back against the couch. Mom, please. Don't mom me, Mark Anthony Sullivan. I raised you better than this. I looked at my phone screen, still recording. So we had admission of false documentation, manipulation of witnesses, and Jessica's illegal sharing of medical information. Derek, are you getting all this? Sarah, I think I need to call you back. Derek's voice was fading as he clearly realized he'd stepped into something much bigger than family drama. Oh, you'll definitely want to call back. Because I'm about to contact Dr. Webb's office about Jessica's HIPAA violation, Mrs. Rodriguez about Mark's false claims, and every hotel in downtown Chicago about their security footage from the dates in question. Jessica shot to her feet. You can't prove anything about the hotels. Credit card receipts, Jessica. Digital footprints. Mark wasn't exactly covering his tracks. I smiled coldly. Turns out when you're not paranoid, you're actually pretty good at investigating. Who knew? Mark's phone buzzed again. Then again. And again. Looks like word is spreading, I observed. Want to bet that's your brother Dave asking why Linda just called him crying? The sound of Tommy's footsteps on the stairs interrupted the mounting tension. Mommy, Mr. Peanuts wants to know if we're having a sleepover at Grandpa's house forever. I stopped the recording and knelt down to Tommy's level. Not forever, sweetheart. Just until Mommy finds us our own special place. As I looked into my son's innocent blue eyes, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. I wasn't the same woman who'd sat at that dinner table 3 hours ago, doubting her own sanity. I was stronger now. And I was just getting started. I picked up Tommy, holding him close as I looked around the living room one final time. Mark was still slumped on the couch, his phone buzzing incessantly with what I assumed were angry family members. Jessica had retreated to the kitchen, probably trying to figure out how to spin her HIPAA violation into somehow being my fault. Mommy, Tommy whispered in my ear, why did Daddy and Aunt Jessie make you sad? Out of the mouths of babes. My 4-year-old son had cut through 6 months of gaslighting and manipulation with one simple question. They had made me sad. They'd made me doubt myself, question my sanity, and feel like a failure as both a wife and mother. But they hadn't broken me. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, baby, I said softly. But you helped mommy see the truth, and that was very brave. Tommy nodded sullenly, then brightened. Will I still get to have my birthday party next month? You'll have the best birthday party ever, I promised, and for the first time all evening, I actually meant something positive I said. Dad appeared with Tommy's overnight bag and my laptop case. Ready to go, sweetheart? As we headed toward the door, Mark finally found his voice. Sarah, wait. We need to talk about logistics. About seeing Tommy, about the house payments, about... I turned around slowly, shifting Tommy to my other hip. Mark, the only person you'll be talking to about anything is my lawyer. Robert Chen was kind enough to give me a referral before he dropped you as a client. Mark's face went pale. He dropped me? Apparently, lawyers don't like clients who lie to them about falsifying evidence. I smiled. Who knew? Jessica stepped out of the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear. Derek, please, you have to understand the context. I plucked the phone from her hands and spoke directly into it. Derek, this is Sarah again. Just so we're clear, the story here is about systematic fraud, not family drama. I'll have my attorney send you copies of all documentation by tomorrow morning. The real documentation. I hung up and handed the phone back to Jessica. Next time you want to destroy someone's reputation, maybe don't do it while they're recording you admitting to federal crimes. Mom appeared in the doorway, her face still etched with disappointment. Jessica, get your things. You're not staying here tonight. But Mom. No. Mom's voice was final. You made your choices. Sarah and Tommy are going to Dad's house. Mark can stay here and figure out his next steps. And you. She looked at Jessica with an expression I'd never seen before. You can explain to your landlord why you'll need that apartment back. As we walked toward Dad's truck, Tommy pointed over my shoulder. Mommy, look. Daddy's crying. I didn't turn around. For 6 months, I'd been the one crying while they convinced me I was losing my mind. Let Mark experience what it felt like to lose everything through his own actions. Sometimes people cry when they realize they've made very bad mistakes, I told Tommy, buckling him into Dad's car seat. Will he say sorry? I looked back at the house where I'd planned to raise my son, where I'd trusted my husband and sister, where I'd nearly lost myself to their manipulation. I don't know, baby. But it doesn't matter anymore. We're going to be just fine. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. My 4-year-old son had given me the greatest gift imaginable, the truth. Everything else I'd rebuild from there.